cut out. I'm having all kinds of techno weird shit happening this morning. So, one of the things I've noticed in the alternative scene, as some of you have already noticed, is this resurgence in Orthodox Christianity that's happening. And suddenly, people who claim to be truth seekers are going into the most fictional book of them all, the Bible, in order to establish their ancient history links and their ancient history stories. Even Egyptian scholars agree that most of the Old Testament, the first 5 books of the Torah, are probably all allegory. There's no evidence for the exodus from Egypt by the Egyptians into Israel and so on. It just doesn't exist. And there's these places that are supposed to be where there's cities and battles. Now, of course, there are things that do exist, names of various places and stuff, but a lot of the other stuff are conflagrations of various stories and parables from the Middle East and renamed and so on. And but that doesn't mean it doesn't have validity. I mean, you can build a religion and a spiritual tradition on great stories, but the problem is it's not history, you know. Now, because it's not history, it conflagrates with other ancient history, and I'm now seeing a resurgence in this awful, awful British Israelism again. Well, if you don't know what British Israelism is, I have a link down below that will take you to a video called Ireland and the Middle East, Ancient Ireland and the Middle East. You can watch that. But without going into too much, it's all bollocks. That's just to sum it up right away. This connection between Ireland, ancient Ireland mythology, and biblical figures. This is rooted in 2 things. Firstly, the Irish annals claimed in the Book of Invasions that the first people to come to Ireland, the Parthenons, were the daughters of Noah. So they had to put a biblical overlay on it. So for starters, that's nonsense. Now, from that, the British Israelites, who were a British radical Presbyterian sect in the late 1800s, early 1900s, were obsessed with this nonsense and this notion that Britain and Ireland were the actual, either the real Holy Land or ancient biblical tribes had come to this part of the world. And their whole thing was driven by basically religious fanaticism based on the Bible, which even Jewish scholars say is wrong, and ignorance of Irish culture and history, and folklore in particular, and language. So therefore, and it's still going on to this day, it's been researched. The classic one being that they claim that the Irish people were the descendants of the tribe of Daniel because of the Tuatha De Danann. The Tuatha De Danann means the people of the goddess Danu. There's nothing to do with Daniel from the Bible. They didn't know that. They knew nothing about Irish. So they used to go around Ireland and say, oh, the name of this place sounds like an Irish, and Middle Eastern word. That's what that means. That nonsense, that kind of crap. And so they started. There was a guy called Boymon Combs in England. He was a Daily Mail journalist, who basically recreated the Holy Land, the unholy land as I call it, in Britain, and claimed like the place like Bristol was Sodom and Gomorrah and stuff like that, just pure out there stuff. But he had a mixed bag. Bowman Coins, I think his name was Combs. He had a mixed bag, that guy, because he did some very good stuff on Atlantis. So, but again, I guess to sell to a wider market, he was a journalist after all, so he had to market to the biggest audience. But anyway, here's the story with Ireland and ancient Egypt. Are there connections between ancient Ireland and Egypt? Absolutely, very plausible ones too. And does that mean that those Irish built or involved in the pyramids in ancient the pre-pharaonic Egypt and pharaonic Egypt? No, of course not. The pyramids and the monuments of the pre-pharaonic ancient Egypt wasn't even built by the Egyptians. It was some pre-culture that later on, just like the Mayans did with the Toltec monuments in Mexico, they came along later and carved their names and initials on, and hieroglyphs on these existing structures, and built some of their own that were very impressive. As well, let's not Let's not discount that. But they were nowhere technologically as advanced as the pre-pharaonic Egyptians who built the Great Pyramid at Giza and so on. In fact, whenever they tried to copy pre-pharaonic technology, they always failed miserably. Like they tried to build pyramids of their own and so on. Now, what is the connection between Ireland and ancient Egypt? It's ancient, but it's not that ancient. There, in the Irish annals, in the Book of Leinster, there's a story of an Egyptian queen called Scota or Scotia, who was married into. She was an Egyptian princess who married an Irish king, basically. Now remember, there was loads of kings in Ireland in those days. That was quite possible in that period. Now we're talking the 5th century. We're not talking the time of the pyramids, and this is where people lose their minds. This is where they lose their minds. They start adding an extra 3 or 4,000 years onto this. There seems to be some kind of link via Christianity between Ireland and the Middle East in the early Christian period. And this has been proven actually conclusively by the finding of Egyptian papyrus, not ancient papyrus, Egyptian papyrus from, say, the late BC era in Ireland. They've been found in Ireland in bogs and stuff like that, preserved by the bogs. So we do have a literal connection between that ancient part of Ireland and Egypt. The Scotia story is probably not true at all. This was probably almost certainly invented by the monks, just like they invented the story that the sons of Noah and the Partholons and the ancient Greeks came here. They were ignorant of history, and they also had to make it fit into the Bible. As you saw in my video yesterday, something we've been struggling with ever since. That's destroyed antiquity and archaeology the whole world over. So there is a Neolithic mound down in County Kerry or Cork with a signpost to do it saying Scotia's grave. That's just a signpost. That's not Scotia's grave. That would be like me going over there to that little hillock there and saying the grave of Finn McCool and putting a sign up. How do you know it's the grave of Finn McCool? There's a sign. That's all there is to prove that that's actually the grave of Scotia or Scotta. It's a sign. In reality, it points to a Neolithic cairn that's from thousands and thousands of years prior to the alleged existence of Scotia in the Middle Ages or whatever, the early part of Christianity. There was connections between Ireland and the rest of the world going back a long way. We do know that for a fact because we can look at the Brighter Hoard and the golden boat was found. That was 3,500 years ago. And the model of the boat that was there was perfectly capable of even making transatlantic voyages. So the ancient Irish, just like ancient people all over the world, the Phoenicians and everyone else, had very good ships. They were not, this the guy. You go to the National Museum of Ireland again. You see the Brighter Hoard there, and this beautiful model of a sailing ship, not a boat, a sailing ship, and they show you how people got around by water in the same period as a hollowed out tree trunk with a guy with animal skins on it. The same nonsense again. No, they had good ships. Were they capable of reaching Egypt? Absolutely. Absolutely they were capable of Egypt. I actually believe they were capable of reaching North America. Now this is going back a long time now. But there's absolutely, now listen to me carefully, there's absolutely no connection between ancient Ireland and ancient Egypt. There is not a single artifact, item that you can point to. Scotia was not an ancient pharaonic character. She was a queen or a princess from the early Middle Ages period. So just before the Vikings, basically. So get this thing out of your head that she was like Anunnaki, she was like Nefertiti or Cleopatra. And even she wasn't even Cleopatra would have been ancient compared to her. And she was not a Ptolemy or anything like that. She was not from the dynastic Egyptians that came much later. That's if she existed. She may not have existed at all. but she may just be a great story. But it was a folk tale that arose in the Middle Ages when Christians were taking Irish folk tales and reimagining them for Christian origin stories. Now they were doing that everywhere, by the way. Now, regarding there are some ridiculous books out there claiming that the Irish built the pyramids. I mean, they're just, you see, there's a certain kind of Irish narcissism that's quite obnoxious, and it it's based on like it's literally Father Ted research. Literally, these books saying that the Irish built the pyramids and stuff, they're Father Ted, Father Dougal Maguire level research. They're absolutely retarded, beyond even comprehending comprehend now. And then they'll say, well, we say, well, where's the actual proof? Scotia. No, that was thousands and thousands and thousands of years afterwards. I mean, what's the proof at the pyramids? Egypt, Ted. It's literally like that. And then you say, oh well, there's a part missing from the Rosetta Stone that's actually an ohm. What? Where is it then? Oh, it's been broken off deliberately by the Freemasons so no one find out. Okay, so the Rosetta Stone goes back to Ptolemaic, Ptolemaic Egypt. Ohm wasn't even in circulation or use by then. Oh, okay, yeah, well, it's in the Bible. What is? Look in the Bible. That's what you're dealing with. It's literally that stuff. The connection between Ireland and the pyramids is Father Ted level research. The next time you see someone talking about the goddess Anu being Anunnaki, or Jesus, I nearly died when I saw that one, or Tara being Tara in the Hindu goddess, or Scotia being like this pharaonic Cleopatra, Nefertiti type Egyptian. Think of Father Dougal Maguire telling you this from Father Ted. That's the level of intellect that's involved in that. It's bonkers. Now, it's also self-hating. The Irish don't need to pretend they built the pyramids in order to have a decent history. We have a fantastic fucking history. We don't need to try to pretend we're the origin stories. I mean, the Jews do that as well. They claim they built the pyramid. The stories, not the fairy tales, that they built the pyramids for, and that's why that's why they were all in Egypt with Moses. They were building the pyramids for the pharaohs. That's even the stupid Hollywood films. So it's just, and I'm seeing this resurgence again. The one that I was rolling around laughing when I saw Anu and Anunnaki. You just can't make this stuff up. Any person out there who's trying to connect Irish mythology to the Middle East is giving you Father Ted Craggy Island research. No matter how they behave on camera, I'm an expert. No, it's Father Ted level X stuff. There is definite connections between Ireland and the early Christian period. We can state that for absolute fact. We have the stories, we have the histories, and we have the comparative histories on both sides with Coptic Christians, and we have the actual hard evidence of Egyptian late hieroglyphics papyrus found in Ireland in bogs that had been there wrapped up with medieval Latin, Coptic and Greek manuscripts. Okay, so we definitely have a hard link. No doubt about that. Was Scotia an Egyptian princess? It's possible, yes, but she lived in the early Middle Ages. She didn't live in ancient pharaonic times. Even the Book of Leinster says that. Did she? Is Scotia's grave her grave? No, it's just a signpost with a pole with a sign on it, and it points to a Neolithic cairn that was built probably thousands of years even before the pyramids were even built. And look how old they are. And is there any evidence to suggest that Ireland was involved somehow with the pyramids and the Giza and all that stuff and the monuments and the Sphinx and all that? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. You know why? The Irish were too busy doing amazing things of their own in Ireland. Now, there was one Crowley, Alistair Crowley. He gets everywhere, I know, but that's just how he is, how he was. Designed the flag for Ireland, which was a red sunburst on a green background, and he said it is to link ancient Ireland with Egypt and Atlantis. He wasn't saying that Ireland was linked with Egypt. He was saying it was linked to Egypt in the same way Atlantis was. The stories got through. Okay, so, and it wasn't that ancient Egypt. That wasn't pre-pharaonic ancient Egypt. But the most important link there is Atlantis. They're definitely. I'm absolutely, completely convinced now that there was an Atlantean empire, a seafaring empire, based in the Atlantic, and the homeland. It'll be all presented at the. Myself and Neil MacDonald will present all this at the, Mysterious Earth Conference in Preston in September. I'll put the link down below. Timothy and Jason will be there as well, so it'll be like a little BR313 convention at the same time, working in tandem. So you'll have a nice time. The film and the book will be premiered on that date. It's the 12th. It's the weekend, the second weekend, I think, in September. I'll put the link down below in Preston. So come along for this. I used to think that Atlantis could have been real, but it was probably an allegory. I'm now convinced it was real. And if you want to go looking at the ancient links of Ireland, they don't relate back to the Middle East. They relate back to out there in the ocean via places like Orkney. Now, you remember when I said earlier on that the people who tell you Ireland and Egypt, like ancient Egypt and ancient Ireland, are connected, and the ancient Irish built the pyramids. Some of them may also be Freemasons, you putting you off the path, because both myself and Neil have come to the conclusion that just like the secret colleges, that maybe even these secret colleges itself have not been operating on ancient secret mystery schools from Atlantis and from Greece and Rome and Egypt, so much as they've been operating via ancient mystery schools from Atlantis, or whatever Atlantis was, what it was called, and have the rest of you all following this Middle Eastern trail when they've got the real stuff. And we're going to present evidence for this and how things have migrated through. So you Irish who sit there going, oh, sure, Jesus, the Irish are great. We built the pyramids. First of all, you're indulging in Father Dougal Maguire level research and history. You may also have been pulled into a trap by Freemasons who are deluding you from the real thing, or deliberate efforts to move you from the real thing, which is out there in the ocean, what Plato called Atlantis, which was also we know about that via where, Solos in ancient Egypt, and the stories that were brought back to Plato from Egypt. So that's what the Crowley meant when he says Ireland's linked to Egypt and Atlantis. I mean, the Plato story had come back to Ireland like a full circle. And so the Irish, all the artifacts in Ireland all point towards the West. I mean, talking about the really ancient stuff. I am going to show you in the film, and we'll pretend in the book, an object found in Ireland that even top researchers today, it's at least 5,500 years old, say could only have been made with high-powered rotary tools. That's what's out. That's what you Irish are ignoring when you're going on about, sure, we built the pyramids. Sure, we did. What do you say, Ted? Sure, Ted, we built the pyramids. Anunnaki. Scorpia. Stay away from those types. The real story is that, yes, there was links in the Middle Ages. There could have been some truth to the Scotia story. Highly unlikely, but it definitely wasn't based in the pharaonic, the kind of like classic, the Egyptian kind of thing that we know about from ancient Egypt. That's that aesthetic. And that the ancient Irish had very good ships. It may also be a huge clue towards the megalithic culture of North America, something I'm hoping to spend more time investigating in the years to come. And I think I was also, it's good to be skeptical. I wasn't as skeptical, I was cautious. Yes, some of them are root sellers, but absolutely some of them are megaliths. And there's other smoking guns over there as well. So, just like Graham Hancock says, stuff keeps getting older, but it also keeps getting connected in the right direction. The more we discover about ancient Ireland, it's definitely facing towards the West. Something from the West. the more we look at ancient seaboard coast of America, particularly New England, it's pointing towards the east. What's west of Ireland and what's east of ancient North America? Atlantis, or whatever was there in the middle of the Atlantic. And so it's a very exciting story that's going to be revealed in the years to come. And we'll all be on the forefront of it. But it has to only begin when you stop looking at the Middle East and start looking at things independently of what Freemasons and Father Dougal Maguire type researchers, Anunnaki Ted, have moved you towards. See you later.